This is the Sony ZV-E1. It promises amazing stabilization and has the same image quality as cameras over twice its price. But is it any good and does it live up to the hype? We're going to find out with tons of footage in this video. Hey, welcome to the video. Now, let's not waste any time. You are watching me right now on the Sony ZV-E1. This is 25 frames a second with active stabilization on and the internal microphone set on auto. Oh, and by the way, today we're in the beautiful city of York. Now, I'll be honest, I was hoping it would be a little sunnier today to test out this camera, and it's also very, very windy as well. But you know what? That's a good test for the microphone and the image quality coming out of this camera. But why did I buy the ZV-E1? Well, I've always been on the lookout for the best quality camera I can get and the smallest camera I can get, especially if you're on your travels or you're doing business videos and you just want to vlog on the go like I'm doing right now. This is currently the smallest full frame camera you can get. Now, a lot of YouTubers are saying this is incredibly light and small. I wouldn't use the word incredibly light and small. I think it is, of course, a lot smaller than an A7S III, but it's still a pretty big camera in the grand scheme of things. If you compare it to your iPhone, a ZV-1 or a ZV-E10, it's a lot bigger than those kind of cameras, but it does mean you get this incredible image quality from essentially smaller body, a lighter body. It's almost half the weight of some of the bigger full-frame Sony cameras. But anyway, the first thing, let's talk about stabilization, because that was one of the main things I was interested when I purchased this camera. We've currently got it on active stabilization, but let's have a look at dynamic stabilization. Okay, this is with all stabilization turned off. There's no stabilization in this lens. So this is what the image quality looks like with all stabilization turned off. Next up, this is with active stabilization on. This is the stabilization we have on the Sony A7S III and some other Sony cameras. This one actually works really, really well, but this is active stabilization. Okay, now we are on dynamic active stabilization. This crops in quite a lot more, but on the screen at least, this looks incredibly smooth. So this could almost feel like you've got a gimbal built into your camera. Dynamic active stabilization. We don't even get that on the more expensive A7S III we're filming on right now. So let's take a look at the shots. The first one is with active stabilization, which is the stabilization you get with the A7S III. And then we switch to dynamic active stabilization. And as you can see, the footage looks a lot more stable. And I've got to say, I've been really impressed with this. Yes, it does crop in, but if you're filming objects other than yourselves, it doesn't really matter so much. The only negative I would say is that you can see some tiny pull-ins from the left and the right, and I think it happens when the camera overcompensates for your own movement. CineVlog is a brand new feature built into the ZV-E1. It's a really simple feature to use. You simply tap the CineVlog icon on this screen. This will activate it, and essentially what it does is it will add black bars to your footage and a cinematic look. Now, this isn't something I thought I would actually use, but I have filmed this little sequence for you in York, so check this out.
Now, what did you think of that? I was quite impressed with the baked-in looks you get in the CineVlog mode. And that was with no color correcting, no post-processing, just edits and a little bit of music added. So you can get some actually quite cinematic looks from a camera with ease. Now, it's not a feature I'm going to use all the time because I would probably prefer myself to add the black bars and my chosen look after I've filmed the footage. And of course, then if you want to go re-edit the footage for something else, you've got that option too. But it is nice to have it in there. I think I'm using it more for fun than I would for professional videos, but that's a look at the new CineVlog feature. The next negative is the lack of 100 frames a second in 4K. Yes, that's right. At the moment, this camera can only film in 4K at 25 frames a second or 4K 50 frames a second. Yes, you can film 100 frames a second in HD, and the HD quality isn't too bad, but it's a bit of a shame it's not here at the moment. Sony is saying that there is going to be a firmware update to this camera coming in June. It's June the 6th today, and it's not out yet. So I'll keep an eye out for that, but at the time of this review, you can't do 100 frames a second in 4K. But take a look at some of this footage filmed in 4K 50 and 100 frames a second in HD. And even the HD footage, as you can see here, first of all, actually looks pretty good. What do you think? It's a little bit softer, but actually quite usable still. The 4K 50 also looks very, very good. And hopefully we'll get that 4K 100 frames a second coming in the very near future. Just keep an eye on the bottom left of the frame to see what resolution and frame rate we're filming in. Next, let's talk about one of the main features I'm super excited about, and it's the new auto framing feature. But before we do, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, which is Wex. Are you a content creator in search of top-tier gear? Meet Wex Photo and Video, the ultimate hub for all of your photography and videography needs. No matter if you're a Sony enthusiast, a Canon devotee, or a Panasonic pro, Wex has an extensive selection of cameras, lenses, and accessories from these leading brands and more, all at some of the best prices you'll find online. This is even where I purchased my very own ZV-E1 with my own cold hard cash. But Wex is more than just a store. As videographers and filmmakers themselves, they offer expert advice and support to help you find the perfect gear for your unique needs. So visit Wex Photo and Video today and let them help you elevate your content creation journey. And don't forget to tell them Editor's Key sent you.
Okay, so this is auto framing on the ZV-E1. Now, I'm filming on my own, and this is a feature I think is going to be really cool for creators like myself who sometimes do film on their own. Now, how it works is it's cropping into a 4K image, and as I walk around, it's keeping me or the subject in focus as I move towards the scene or further away from the scene. And I'll show you a shot from my iPhone of what is actually happening. This camera is static on the tripod right now, but as I move away, as I move to my right, you can see that it looks like someone is actually filming me and framing me almost perfectly. So maybe you do car reviews, maybe you need to walk around your studio. This could be the perfect solution to make it look like you've got a camera person with you, and it just makes your shots a little more dynamic. Now, of course, this is cropping into a 4K image, so you are going to lose a little bit of image quality, but I've been looking back at this, and overall, I think this is pretty good. What do you think of the new auto framing feature? Okay, so let's talk audio. And all the audio you've been listening to throughout this entire video is just coming from the top of the ZV-E1. This is the built-in microphone within the camera. And I've got to say, listening back to a lot of the shots, I think it's actually pretty good, especially if you throw on an Editor's Keys audio plugin. I'm going to do that now. So now you're listening to me with the Editor's Keys audio plugin turned on, because before, you know, the audio is good. You could easily upload that to YouTube, but it is a little bit flat sounding. So by putting on one of these plugins, you can really turn the audio coming from this camera into something that sounds a little bit more professional. I'll turn the audio plugin off, and now we're back to the raw audio coming from the Sony ZV-E1. But this has really surprised me. This means you can just literally throw this camera in the bag with the lens, and you can get some pretty decent audio. So you've heard a lot of positives so far. So what are some of the negatives of this little camera? Well, the first one is the lack of an EVF, a little viewfinder on the top of the camera, and you will get that with a camera like the A7S III. Now, for me, that's not really a big deal because I only tend to film video. I don't do a lot of photography
on my cameras. I'm more of a video user, but if you are a photographer, it might be something that bothers you. So keep an eye out for that one.
So let's talk battery life on the ZV-E1, and I've got to say I'm pretty impressed. I've used this for a full day of shooting in York and a full day of shooting here, and of course I've been using it during the week. I haven't had any overheating issues, and I would say the battery life is just really the same as an A7 III or an A7S III because it uses the same battery. I've heard some people say it goes down a little bit faster. Yesterday I felt that a tiny bit, but I don't know if it's because I was just changing it between modes. I was using the touch screen a lot, and of course I'm using the built-in mic and things like that, but overall no problem at all with the battery, and I like that it's using the same battery as all the other Sony cameras. It means it's super easy to pick up a spare battery. So in terms of lens options, you can of course put any lens on this camera, but these two are my favorite vlogging lenses, and this one especially, this little 18mm lens, is not an APS-C lens. So I'm going to talk about both of these in another video.
Now we've seen all of the footage and heard the audio coming from the camera, let's talk about the all-important price. This camera is £2,300 here in the UK. Now, in some cases, that may seem like a lot of money. I mean, they are aiming this at vloggers, and I think for a lot of vloggers, £2,300 plus the cost of lenses is going to be more than most people can afford. And I think if you're starting out as a vlogger or a content creator, you should probably start with a ZV-E1 or a ZV-E10 or a different brand of camera, because you may not know if you actually like the filming process. On the other hand, £2,300 for this camera is actually quite cheap when you compare it to the FX3, the FX30, the A7S III, which are all very, very similar, especially the A7S III, which has the same image sensor as this camera and was more than £3,500 when I purchased that. So for £1,000 less, I'm getting the same image quality as the A7S III in a lighter, smaller body. It has better AI and better built-in audio. So in that sense, it's actually quite cheap. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. You've seen the footage now. What do you think of it? I'd love to hear your comments below, because I think it's the footage which really speaks for itself. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this or editing tutorials for Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, make sure to give the channel a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.